The confetti rained down. The cameras flashed. The world watched in awe. At the center of it all stood a man no one believed in. He clutched the Super Bowl MVP trophy, his eyes filled with emotion. The reporters called it one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know the years of rejection, the failures that nearly broke him, the moments when he almost walked away from the game forever. Because just a few years ago, he wasn't a superstar. He was a failure. Cut from teams, doubted by coaches, and forgotten by fans. His dream of playing in the NFL seemed impossible, and the world had already moved on without him. But he wasn't ready to let go. Through pain, through setbacks, through moments of complete hopelessness, he refused to quit. And in doing so, he built a legacy that would inspire millions. This is the story of a man who went from failure to greatness, from forgotten to legendary. And by the time this journey was over, he had shocked the world. Every great comeback story starts with failure. His journey to the NFL wasn't a straight path to success. It was a road filled with disappointment, rejection, and moments that nearly shattered him. Coming out of college, he wasn't a household name. He wasn't a Heisman winner. He didn't have the hype of a first-round draft pick. But he believed that if he worked hard enough, if he gave everything to the game, he'd get his shot. That shot never came. Draft day arrived, and he waited, pick after pick, round after round. He watched as teams selected players he had outperformed in college. He watched as his dreams slipped further and further away. And then, it was over. His name was never called. He was undrafted, unwanted, a ghost in the world of professional football. But he didn't give up. He signed as an undrafted free agent, hoping to prove himself in training camp. He pushed his body to the limit, trying to stand out among first-rounders and established veterans. It didn't matter. The coaches barely gave him reps. The depth chart had him buried at the bottom, and before the season even started, he was cut. It was the moment that breaks most players, the moment when reality hits. Maybe the dream isn't meant to happen. He packed his bags, left the facility, and for the first time in his life, he felt completely lost. The next year was brutal. He trained alone, waiting for a call that never came. He sent tapes to teams, hoping someone would give him a second chance. Nothing. He was working a job he hated, watching games from his couch, wondering if he should just let go of football entirely. The world had given up on him. And for the first time, he almost gave up on himself. But then, something changed. One moment, one decision, one final push that would rewrite his destiny. And from that moment on, he would never be the same again. Failure had nearly broken him. He had spent months away from the game, drowning in frustration, questioning everything he had ever worked for. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the names called on draft day. His name wasn't one of them. The world had moved on. Coaches, scouts, and analysts had written him off. But one thing still burned inside him, the belief that he wasn't finished. One night, sitting in his tiny apartment, watching the NFL on his old TV, something clicked. He had spent too long feeling sorry for himself, waiting for another chance. If no one was going to give him a shot, he was going to take it. The next morning before the sun rose, he was on the field, alone, running routes, doing drills, lifting weights, no cameras, no coaches watching, just pure work. He transformed himself, physically, mentally, emotionally. He fixed his weaknesses. He studied film like an obsessed student of the game. He worked on his speed, his strength, his endurance, every flaw that held him back before. And then, his second chance arrived. A team's practice squad had an injury, and out of desperation, they called him in for a workout. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a guarantee. It was nothing more than a single tryout. But for him, it was everything. When he walked into the facility, he wasn't the same player they had once overlooked. He was different now, hungrier, sharper, unbreakable. The coaches expected him to fail. Instead, he dominated. He ran routes so crisp that defenders couldn't keep up. He caught passes that seemed impossible. He showed a level of intensity that even the veterans couldn't ignore. The team signed him, not as a starter, not even as a backup, but as a body for the practice squad, a name on a long list of forgotten players. But that was all he needed, because this time he wasn't going to let the opportunity slip away. This time, he was going to prove to the world that failure wasn't his ending. It was just the beginning. He wasn't supposed to be here. A practice squad player, a long shot, just another name filling the roster. But he didn't care about what others thought. He had one shot to prove himself, and he was ready to give everything he had. Every practice, he went harder than anyone else. First one on the field. Last one to leave the weight room. Studying film while others slept. While the starters treated practices like routine, he treated them like game day. Coaches started noticing. The veterans who once ignored him began respecting him. Then, the unexpected happened. Midway through the season, an injury struck the team's receiving core. A backup was out. The next guy up, gone. And just like that, he was activated for his first NFL game. The moment he had dreamed about was here, but it wasn't going to come easy. Game day. The stadium lights blinded him as he ran onto the field. The crowd didn't know his name yet. The commentators barely mentioned him. But he was ready. His first play? A simple block, one that sent a defender flying. His second? A quick slant. He caught it and fought for extra yards. The sideline erupted. Then, the moment that changed everything. It was third down. The team needed a big play. The quarterback scanned the field. His usual targets were covered. Then he saw him. A nobody. An underdog running his route perfectly. The ball was launched. Time slowed. He reached up, fingertips brushing the ball, and he caught it. First down. The crowd roared. That night, he finished with 5 catches and a crucial third down conversion. It wasn't a record-breaking game, but it was enough. Enough for the coaches to keep him on the active roster. Enough for the team to trust him. Enough to prove that he belonged. And from that moment forward, he wasn't just a practice squad player anymore. He was a man on a mission. A man who had failed, fought back, and refused to be denied. But the biggest moment of his career? That was still to come. Every NFL player has a defining moment, a game where they prove, without a doubt, that they belong. For him, that moment was about to arrive. A few weeks had passed since his first NFL game. He had gone from a forgotten practice squad player to a reliable backup. But he was still waiting for the moment that would define his career. Then, fate stepped in. The team's star receiver went down with an injury. The backup, also injured. Suddenly, he was the next man up. And it wasn't just any game. It was a primetime showdown against the best defense in the league. The pressure was suffocating. The critics doubted him. But when he stepped onto that field, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, pure confidence. The first quarter was rough. He dropped a pass, missed a block. The doubt crept in. Am I really ready for this? Then, something switched. The second quarter, he made his first big catch, shaking off a defender for a first down. The third quarter, he outran the defense for a 40-yard gain. By the fourth quarter, he was unstoppable. Then, the game came down to one final play. Clock winding down. Game tied. The team was at midfield. The quarterback dropped back, scanning the field. The primary target was covered. The second option, not open. Then, he saw him. The same underdog who had once been cut, ignored, and doubted. The ball was launched deep down the sideline. He sprinted, legs burning, heart pounding. The defender was right on him. The pass was too far. Or was it? With everything he had left, he dove. Fingertips met leather. He caught it. The stadium erupted. First down, field goal range. The team won the game. The headlines the next morning told the story. From practice squad to primetime star. The NFL's newest underdog hero. They said he wasn't good enough. They were wrong. This wasn't just one game. This was the moment that changed his life forever. That game changed everything. In a matter of hours, he went from an overlooked backup to the most talked-about player in the league. Analysts debated how they had missed his potential. Fans flooded social media, calling him the next big thing. But for him, this wasn't an overnight success. This was years of struggle, years of failure, years of refusing to give up. He continued to prove himself, game after game. With every snap, he silenced the doubters who once said he wasn't good enough. He became a key piece of the team, making plays that turned losses into wins. And then, the impossible happened. The team fought their way through the playoffs, one victory after another, until they reached the Super Bowl. Under the brightest lights, on the biggest stage, he delivered the performance of a lifetime. The final quarter. One last drive, a championship on the line. The ball was thrown his way, one defender, then two. They grabbed at his jersey, trying to stop him, but just like in life, he fought through. Touchdown. The moment shocked the world. The same player who had once been forgotten was now lifting the Super Bowl MVP trophy in front of millions. His journey became legendary, not just because of the championship, but because of what it represented. Resilience, perseverance, a refusal to quit, no matter how many times the world says you should. As he stood on that podium, looking out at the thousands of fans chanting his name, he knew his story was bigger than football. It was for every kid who had ever been told they weren't good enough, for every athlete who had ever been cut from a team, for every dreamer who had ever failed, only to rise again. Because greatness isn't about where you start. It's about how hard you're willing to fight. If his journey inspired you, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible NFL stories of resilience and greatness.